Hello and welcome to part 2 of episode 56. I'm now joined with Robby Price, director with PGC. Met him 2 weeks ago in Chandler, and we found ourselves at another session working here in Idaho. And I'm very excited to have him with me here today to share his story, more for like the transformation of your coaching style and how that evolved through the PGC lens and how you've been able to apply it to your programs back home. So, Robby, please introduce yourself to the audience and let's get this thing rolling.
Yeah, like Nanik said, my name is Robby Price. I am a PGC Director. I'm also a head boys basketball coach at Houghton High School in Shreveport, Louisiana. And basketball is my life, but you know, the game on the court is one thing. Everything that we can do off the court through the game of basketball that's my heart, and that's why I do what I do. I
love it. First question just came to mind: Louisiana basketball. What is it like? Is it different? I'm from the West Coast, so that's my hoops. What is the Louisiana like?
Yeah, I mean, Louisiana basketball is super athletic. We have some of the best athletes in the world, and you'll notice whenever you pull up draft boards for the NFL, there's a lot of guys from Louisiana. And then you look at the NBA draft boards, or even just players that go play D1, and we don't have a lot from Louisiana, mainly because we create phenomenal athletes, but we don't create phenomenal basketball players. And what that means is our games are track meets. I mean, our games are physical, fast, and, you know, from my perspective, I kind of see that and I think, hey, zag on them, and if we can get really fundamental, you know, more nuanced and heady basketball, then I don't know, maybe we can get something going.
Yeah, you can dare to be different.
Dare to be different.
Yeah, change the way hoops is going there. So please, where did you start your coaching journey? Where are you at now? And share that with me, please.
Yeah. So my coaching journey is. It's embarrassing in hindsight.
Okay.
You know, it's rough because I look back at some of the things I did and some of the ways that I coached my teams, and hindsight is 20/20, obviously, but looking back, I wish I would have done things differently. And that first year, I made some really silly mistakes. And just looking back now, I would have approached it completely differently. I came in, and my first school was Evans High School. 30 minutes from the nearest Walmart, no cell service. I tell people all the time that the first day of school, there were chickens that were walking up and down the hallway. We were in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And the team had been very bad for a very long time. And so when I came in, I thought, okay, bad program, you know, not used to seeing a lot of success, so we need to do a complete transformation.
Yeah.
And the way that I chose to do that was, in hindsight, not ideal. All I knew was what my high school coach had done. And taking the style that my high school coach used and, you know, a little bit of the style that I picked up during my college career, I tried imitating that. And what that looked like was really putting pressure on kids in a negative context, you know, very punishment based, having really, really high standards that almost you don't expect them to maintain.
What age group were you coaching at the time?
Yeah, so a varsity boys high school.
Okay.
So, you know, freshmen through seniors, super small school. So we only had one team. So it's not like freshman team or JV team, just one team. And, you know, in my mind, all of these ridiculous, super high standards, you know, that's making us tougher. You know, this is elevating our standard. Well, that's not how it translated to my athletes, because I came in first day and I had these insane standards. I had these, you know, requirements that I was placing on them. They didn't know who I was. You know, we didn't have any kind of relationship up to that point.
Yeah.
And I just expected that, you know, they would agree with me that my set of standards would lead to winning basketball. And not only did it not, but it destroyed the relationships I had with my players. And that's something I really regret in hindsight.
No doubt. I think the athletes are probably thinking, who's this guy coming in with these standards and these thoughts? Like, they probably never seen something like that before, I'm guessing.
No.
And the coach before, I mean, did you know anything about?
I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't familiar, but like I said earlier, I just kind of tried to replicate what my head coach did. The difference is my program in high school was extremely successful.
Yeah.
And so we kind of already had that buy-in, like, hey, we're going to do super strict dress code. Coach isn't going to allow us to wear accessories in the game. Coach is going to require that we have matching shoes at all times. Coach is going to have us have 6 a.m. practices. And that's going to result in the state championships that we keep winning. Well, if you're not winning the state championships, and hey, maybe you didn't even win a game last year, and now we're having 6 a.m. practices, that connection never...
Huge disconnect for athletes.
Massive disconnect.
Because I think actually with my college team right now is when coach tries to implement like culture shifting ideas, there are sometimes like a disconnect, and it doesn't, if it's not enforced every day, and if the players aren't buying into it,
100%.
There's no point. And coaches always says like a player-led program, and they talk about that all the time in PGC too. Like a player-led team is a winning team.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important to still have a coach and like the figurehead with the ideas like, at the top. So I think that's very important. But also you mentioned like the mimicking of styles, and I think that's very common for coaches. Like we're always picking up things from other people, but it's who we're picking them up from.
Sure.
Because like I think as we're going to talk about later in this episode, like you come to PGC, you get exposed to all these new ideas, and then you can start adding those things to your toolbox. So at what point did that shift start to happen for you coaching wise?
Yeah. So, you mentioned player-led programs. That was not something in my vocabulary. The only thing that I knew, the only thing that I had ever seen before were coach-led programs. And so I had my first season, not very successful. We didn't win a lot of basketball games. And then due to the requirements, the standards, in hindsight, probably unrealistic standards that I was placing on these athletes, I was destroying the relationships. I was the bad guy. And that spread. And so when I went to my first PGC session, after my second year of coaching, it was a revelation. Things like what you just mentioned, like a player-led program, a commitment-based culture. It's like,
whoa.
I'd never heard these things. Like, you can do that? And I'd only known one way. And I was just trying to do what I knew.
So when you came into PGC, did you come in as an OC, like with the coaching hat on, or did you come in as a BI? Yeah,
no, my first connection with Point Guard College was as an observing coach at Texas Women's University with Matt Saman. Matt Saman, phenomenal coach in the Dallas area, who I've had the pleasure of connecting with since then. And PGC always says, bring a notebook because you're going to want to write down your notes. Here I am, I'm thinking, it's not going to be that much. It's
That's
just
hilarious.
So I showed up without a notebook.
With hindsight now.
And so I showed up without a notebook, and I'm sitting in my first classroom, and I'm like, holy cow.
I want a notebook.
And so I after that classroom, I got in my car, I went to Walmart, and I went and got a notebook because everything they were giving me was the first time I had ever heard it.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting.
So I have a question. If you could explain, I've talked about PGC and my relationship with it as a BI. Like I've recorded episodes as I've been at different sessions over the course of the summer.
Yeah.
So could you, in your own words, like explain what exactly PGC is? Because it's kind of hard to explain to people that aren't in it and don't experience a session. That's why you encourage like OCs and parents to come and watch, because then they can really understand what their investment is. So if you could find a way to explain that for us.
So whenever PGC is doing a lot of their social media stuff, their hashtag is be a light. And for me, that sums up PGC. Basketball is a dark world. The competitiveness turns to nastiness. The desire to beat your opponent turns into the desire to humiliate your opponent. And it's a dark world. PGC is the light in that dark world. Positive-based coaching. Commitment-based culture. Not you must do this or we're going to run, but hey, this is something that's going to lead to success. I'm going to make the commitment to do it. You're going to make the commitment to do it. And then we'll hold each other accountable. one of the things that Matt Saman said at my first session was, you get more flies with honey than vinegar.
That's a great saying.
Isn't it a great saying?
Yeah.
But I heard that and I was like, there's no way that's true. Because the only way that I ever thought that I could move the mule was with a stick. I'm going to beat the mule with a stick and then it's going to move and sprints, running stadiums, now we're going to do push-ups. But you could also put a carrot out in front of the mule and he's going to move for that carrot a lot more consistently. And he's going to be happy to be moving because he sees what his end result is. He's not running in fear away from a punishment. He's moving towards a positive goal. And PGC's centered all around that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because that also is helping my framing and for people that are listening because I find it hard to explain sometimes. Yeah. And that's a great point about basketball being so dark at times because it is very, very competitive. And there's even days that it doesn't even feel fun. But it's the times that I come back to these sessions and I see how the athletes are all lit up and laughing and having like a great time. I remind that we're all just playing a child's game at the end of the day. And it's so fun when you look at it from that lens. Yeah. Because the amount of pressure, and we've talked about this too briefly this week about the amount of pressure that we put on ourselves being competitors. Like, for example, like you don't even shoot a basketball anymore necessarily because of that competitive fire that's still living inside of you. Yeah. That, that's the darkness that basketball can bring out. Yeah. Because we love this game so much and also it's where we can let our competitive nature really flourish and go too far. Flourish and become destructive. I currently, let me go ahead and finish what happened at my first school. I wasn't worried about the relationships with the players. I wasn't worried about the relationships with the parents. All I was worried about is, did you meet my standards? And when they didn't, it was either punishment, send home, you're not part of the team. And initially the parents were like, oh yeah, we got a tough basketball coach. Until I sent home their kid. Until I kicked their kid off the team for not wearing the team polo on game day. And so at the end of my second season, my principal called me into her office and she said, you've lost the community's trust. Those were her words. Like, the community does not like the direction that the program's going, and so they removed my coaching duties. It was that next summer that I that I went to my first PGC, and I was really blessed because almost as soon as I finished up with my PGC session, I got in contact with what would be my next school. And yet again, not a great situation. The year before, they had only won one game. They were not competitive in most of their games. And they really lacked the kind of athletes that you would normally need in order to compete. But now, I had new tools. Once you have your eyes open to something, now you are responsible to it. Naivety and ignorance is one thing. Like, in my first school, obviously I did things that I wish I wouldn't have, but I didn't know any better. Okay, now I've been exposed to how it can be different. Okay, now it's my responsibility. There's no excuses anymore.
No excuses anymore. Yeah, exactly. And so that next school, I had new tools.
So new tools, what were some of those tools that you began to implement? You touched on a few, but what were the biggest ones that stood out to you that you began to implement?
Yeah, so my number one priority became making sure that my players knew that I loved them. I told them every day. I made an intention to talk to them about something besides basketball before I talked to them about basketball. I prioritized them as people. I prioritized them as students who I wanted to help instead of athletes who are going to help me win games. And so just starting with that framework changed how I interacted with my athletes. It became not what I'm telling you we're going to do, me leading, this is what we are going to do. Things like, hey, we didn't meet the standard. Instead of us running sprints, let's talk about what happened. Let's come up with a game plan.
Bringing them into the conversation.
Bring them in.
Yeah.
And then let's try a do-over. Let's see if we can do it again. And if we do it again and we do it the right way, light them up. Just massive amount of praise. Instead of punishing the behavior we don't want to see, reward the behavior we do want to see. Because the first time that happened, and the kids at my second stop, as soon as they saw the way that I celebrated them, just made them feel like superstars, they wanted that to happen again. And so it was so much more motivating than fear of running sprints.
I think that's one thing that our program suffers from a little bit is oftentimes we'll feel like our coach is only pointing out the things that we're doing wrong. And we've aired this out to them like in the locker room and things like that. And even in high school, I could feel like that sometimes. Like we're only focusing on the bad things. But when we start talking about bringing into conversation of how we can get better, that's when that shift starts happening. That's for us in the spring. Our spring workouts this most recent time, that was what more of the energy felt like, was we were all coming together behind the same idea and we were reinforcing the good habits and the good things that we were seeing. And that's when I'm starting to feel more optimistic about my next college season now.
That's awesome.
Because of that.
For sure.
So hopefully we continue to build on that. Reinforcing the positive nature. And that was picked up through the exposure to PGC.
Yeah, because, PGC, every single camp, we have very high standards for our athletes. We demand high-level basketball. We demand behavior that we call special. But we never punish whenever they don't meet that standard. And yet, magically, every Thursday, Friday of every camp, they are at the standard.
They elevate to it.
They elevate to it. And so, we've never done sprints at a PGC. But whenever the athletes do what we want them to do, we light them up and we celebrate them. And look at the transformations.
It really is. Even taking a look at this week, we're at a commuter course. Like we don't have as much time with them, but I was talking to it with somebody that was one of the OCs, and he was like, "Wow, like basketball from day one to right now is night and day." Like I did not expect them to be hooping like this on day 4. We're playing Ultimate, and it's like they're throwing like ball fakes, they're jump stop and arms. Like it's refreshing to know that like the coaching and the philosophies that are being implemented are being received. Yeah. And we get to watch it every day. Yeah. And that's in a commuter course. Like imagine the transformation.
Exactly.
Yeah. We don't have that much time with them. So not all coaches are able to make these changes. So what do you think, why do some coaches struggle to make this coaching change, this flip?
I think a lot of coaches are in the position that I was initially as well. And maybe they're in better situations, and maybe they're just in cultures where that's expected. The hard-nosed jerk head coach who is going to prioritize outcomes over relationships. Maybe that's all they've ever known. And so one of the things that I am most excited about with my time with PGC is, you just mentioned the OCs that we had this week, the observing coaches. They are my favorite people to talk to, because in my mind, if I can spread some of these positive mindsets and some of these enlightening coaching principles with them, then I'm not just impacting one athlete at a camp. I could be impacting 40 athletes back at their program. I had this conversation the other day. I am actively trying to get as many coaches in my district that I compete with involved with PGC.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a great idea.
Fully knowing that it may lead to them being a better basketball team. But what is more important to me is, can we improve the world of basketball? Can we turn games from being competition of humiliation, competition of dominating your opponent and making them, look weak and I'm so strong and powerful, to a competition of both teams trying to do their best and meet their highest potential. And at the end of the day, one of the teams is going to be better.
I think it all comes out in the wash, but at least get them both on the same, give them both the same opportunity and the same knowledge that PGC affords to athletes. Like, that's what I would love to see too. Like, the more people that can be around that energy and around those ideas, I think the better for the basketball community, like you mentioned. I'm wondering, why do coaches not want to make the change though? Is it because they think that their way is better? Is it like some stubbornness?
I'm sure
like,
there's some stubbornness.
Yeah.
I'm also, if a coach has kept his job for a long period of time, he's been some level of successful.
True.
And he was successful with what he's known. So, it's kind of almost a survivorship bias where, I've been doing this for 10 years and I won X number of games. Why would I change? And it really takes a situation like mine where you have kind of an eye-opening moment of failure to have a moment of searching, like, is there something else? And so, it's kind of a little self-licking ice cream cone.
That's a funny way to put it. So now speaking to, you mentioned it in Chandler, like you're coming off your first winning season.
Yeah.
So how does that feel? And talk about it's obviously reinforcing the good habits and the
100%.
good stuff you've been implementing. So yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I got my second opportunity, and the year before, school had only won one game, or the team had only won one game, and the only reason they won that game was because their opponent had 6 players and 2 of them fouled out.
Oh wow!
So it was a struggle, and I came in and nothing to do with me. I tell people all the time, I just drive the bus. But my third year there, we won a district championship. My third year there, we had a above 500 record, and I believe that is entirely a testament to the coaching strategies that I gained from PGC. Did it lead to success on the court? Yes. Me personally, that is not my number one driving factor. The number one driving factor is the fact that I have players who I built relationships with at that school who reach out to me for life advice, who still see me as a important part of their lives and want to reconnect with me even after they're done playing for me. That to me is so much more important than wins on the court.
Absolutely. It's leading with relationships first.
100%.
One thing that I think you could speak on really well would be the athletes that have coaches, because they're out there. The coaches that are still leading with this like performance, let's call it the stick method.
Yeah, the stick method.
What would you say to those athletes that are dealing with a coach like that because they don't have another option? They can't transfer. They can't get to a coach that has a different coaching philosophy. What is your message to them of how they can make the best of their situation?
Jeez, that's tough. A lot of times we are dealt cards that aren't fair. And I wish all athletes got to have coaches that had the PGC mindset. I mean, I wish every basketball athlete could come to a PGC session. Unfortunately, that's not feasible yet. So what can we do in the meantime? I would say that we can choose to be the change with what we can control. We can choose to interact with our coach in a way where we are more relational. As an athlete, we just finished our session where I was the director, and I shared with the athletes on the final day. They really moved me in the way that they reached out and tried connecting with me and asked about how I was doing and were concerned about me as a person. And that made, that was super gratifying and super, heartfelt. And so is it hard? Yeah, it's going to be really hard. And maybe it's not even going to be successful. But you have to play the cards you're dealt. And those cards look like, hey, what can I control? Well, I can control my actions. What can I control? I can control the way I interact with my teammates. I can control the way I interact with my coaches. And I can control the way that I train and play. Can I take changes of my game and put those in those areas?
And I would say on the flip, that's for the athletes. What's the message to the coaches that are using the stick method? Like, what would you tell them if you had, say I'm the coach that has that stick method, what would be your message to me?
Yeah, my message would be, you've been very successful with the stick method. I get it. What if I told you, 30 for 30? What if I told you that you could get the same outcomes in a way that elevate your players as people? What if I told you you could get the same outcomes and leave the end of the season with players having a relationship with you where you're telling each other that you love each other. What if I told you that parents would feel like dropping them off to go to practice is like them spending time with family?
That sounds like a pretty good deal.
I would take that option.
It does sound pretty good. So how are players responding to this new coach, Robby?
Yeah, I have seen some really awesome results. One of the things that's really fun for me is the players who aren't as gifted. I feel like I have some great coaching tools. I feel like I can empower athletes and get the best out of them. But there's some athletes who kind of already start on third base. They show up to high school and they can jump higher than everybody else. Mm-hmm. They already have a little bit of natural talent more than anybody else. And I can maybe get 10% more out of them and elevate them to their best. But it's already pretty good.
Yeah.
My favorite interactions, my favorite relationships, and I feel like the athletes that I connect with the closest are the ones who come to me without very much already. They struggle athletically. They maybe don't have a very large skill set, mm-hmm. but they buy in to what I'm talking about.
And you see the most growth with those athletes.
I mean, I can get 10% out of a great athlete, but if I take somebody from good mm-hmm. and give them 20%, 30%, maybe I still only have a player that isn't going to win District Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. But I have elevated them. I've given them more confidence. I've created a player that probably would not exist otherwise. The great mm-hmm. player was going to be great no matter what. The good player, it was up in the air.
What do you think is the difference between a good player and a great player?
Oh, man. We're breaking it down right now, aren't we? So here's my PGC answer, and then I'll give you my coaching answer.
Please.
The PGC answer would be, can you lead yourself, and then can you lead others? And honestly, nowadays, with the current climate of athletics and the current climate of, how athletes are interacting with the world, leading themselves is the larger challenge. Mm-hmm. Having self-control, having discipline, having consistency, building good habits, that is what a great player looks like. Consistency of habits. The big thing we talk about here at PGC.
Yep, absolutely.
I think that's something you covered recently on a podcast. And so that PGC-wise is what would make a great player. Back home in Louisiana, I mean, you got to be athletic enough to guard. You got to be able to shoot. Mm-hmm. And if we're finishing at the rim, I want you going forward, not you falling backwards. Yep. And if you come to me with those things, we're already starting at a good spot.
Yeah.
Now it's time to take all of the leading yourself. Now it's time to build good habits. Now it's time to be self-disciplined and to demonstrate self-control. And that's how we're going to maximize our potential.
Well said. So please, do you have any, before we move into like the rapid fire type stuff at the end of this segment, I'd like to kind of hand it over to you if you have any burning desires, any closing little thoughts that you needed to just get out to the basketball community, sports community, because it's, who even knows who's going to be listening to this type of episode. So I'm so excited. I'm excited to get it out there. But
I'm so excited. This message that I'm preaching of positive basketball is not one that I'm preaching alone. There are a bunch of organizations who have kind of caught on to this idea, and find one. If you're a coach right now who's listening to this and you have connected with something that I've said, or something that I've said has intrigued you, there are people all over the country who are trying to build this positive culture of basketball. Mm-hmm. And we will become so much more powerful when you join us. Please come join us. I can speak for PGC specifically. Come be an observing coach. Come check out a session. Reach out and maybe apply to be a BI. You will see things and learn things that I'm pretty convinced will lead to you joining our team. Mm-hmm. And we'll be that much more stronger. That much more stronger?
More strong?
We'll be that strong.
I love it. Because you're pretty strong yourself.
Man, I'm just trying to be like you, Nan.
Oh, I love it. So what's on your coaching horizon? Obviously, stepping into the director pathway now and doing that during the summer. But in terms of like obviously coaching high school right now. Is college coaching on your mind? Is full force into the directing? Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. So I tell all of my assistant coaches, family comes first. And this is something I picked up from Mike Leach, actually. If you miss something with your family because of this job, I'm going to be more upset with you than just missing. Like, I would rather you be at that dance recital, that T-ball game. And I live that out. So my son is in my district, and he's going to play for me. And so I'm not going anywhere until my son graduates high school.
And what year is he right now?
2nd grade.
Okay,
We
so
got a
you're
minute.
staying put.
We got a minute to go. And I'm just so excited on it because now I have, I don't know, 6 more years before he shows up at my high school to build a culture and to build a program that he's going to be excited to be a part of. And then for those 4 years, I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, you're just going to be building. So that actually segues me into different question, and then it's about like the coaching relationship between like a father and a son, having a son on a team. So how are you going to approach that? The pressures like putting on your son, how are you going to balance that?
I'm so excited to find out.
Okay.
I've had it's interesting because when my son was a little younger, I wasn't sure what route I was going to go because I've talked to coaches who've told me that they chose specifically to not coach their son and that was a phenomenal decision. And then I've also heard from coaches who specifically chose to coach their son or daughter and how much they loved that decision. So I have no idea, but I'm committing to one, and I'm going to completely sell out into it.
Yeah.
Some things that I've already started processing is I can't give him any preferential treatment. I have to treat him as soon as we cross the lines and we are on the court as my player.
Yep.
Practice is over, and we step across the sideline, and now we're going home. Now he's my son.
Yeah.
And I will continue to develop as a man to get to the point where even when things don't go well, and even when he maybe isn't playing well, I can say what here at PGC we say are some of the most important words a parent can say to a player. I love to watch you play.
It really is.
It has nothing to do with the outcome.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do about how they played. I love to watch you play. And if I can, as a head coach of my son, coaching our high school varsity team, if at the end of the day I can tell my son that, I will be a very happy man.
Well said. So, rapid fire segment. What is your favorite PGC concept you live by?
Ooh, favorite PGC concept. Oh, space. Come on. Oh, you weren't talking basketball. If we're talking off the court, I'm a big precision guy. So
that's my favorite one.
As you know, Nan, shape is how we live our lives here at PGC.
Just letter them out for us real quick.
So it's the word shape, but it's spelled wrong.
Yep.
So S is for spirit, C is for communication, H is for hustle, A is for approach, P is for precision, and E is for enhance. Precision is my favorite one because I am a very big believer that the way you do anything is the way you do everything, and that details matter. And so in my life, that's one that I live out constantly. Now, if I'm being honest with you, the one that I struggle with the most is probably approach, because approach is all about your mindset. And I still have some room to grow in being tough mentally, because I'm just going to confess to you, Nan, there'll be nights whenever we're not getting calls from the official that in my mind, I'm not doing a great job of moving on to the next play.
Yep.
And so I could use some leveling up in that area.
No doubt. I've been wanting to do a solo pod on shape, but I don't know if it's going to blur, if there's might be an issue with PGC and using that for content purposes. But I have been wanting to do an episode. I'd probably have to talk to someone about it, though.
We can make some phone calls.
Yeah, definitely. What is the most underrated skill in today's players?
Underrated skill?
Yeah.
Passing. 100%. I think it's starting to make a rise. Players are watching pros like Jokic, Halliburton, PGC grad, Jokic, and Luka. You can have a highlight from a pass. And I don't feel like 10 years ago, kids, like obviously coaches have always loved passing, but 10 years ago, I don't feel like kids felt that way. I went and saw Luka play this year, and when he's driving baseline and makes a bullet hook pass across the court that's right into the shooter's pocket, that's highlight worthy. That's impressive. And so if we can continue to make that where, hey, throwing a pass is just as cool as dunking on somebody's head, I think the world of basketball is just going to continue to move forward.
Yeah, for
Even
sure.
better.
And I think a transferable skill that applies to basketball, thanking the passer, applies to everything in life. Thanking people in your life, acknowledging other people. It's
100%.
like, and I like that. That's something that we teach is, that bucket's not yours. It's the person that passed you the ball, and it applies to life too. It's like flight attendant, no, thank you. Hotel guest, thank you. It's like always and that's just the first level of gratitude, as we both know.
Level 1 gratitude.
So, yeah, thanking the passer, but it all starts with a good dish and being unselfish.
Yeah, thank the passer. At PGC, whenever you get a bucket, you have to acknowledge that it wasn't because of you, because there are 5 players on the court, and if all of them are not doing their jobs, then you're not able to do yours. And unfortunately, too much in basketball, it becomes me-centric. Well, the first thing I do whenever I score is I thank my teammates for their job. Well, then it's not about me. It's about us.
One word your players would use to describe you.
Hardworking, I would hope. Committed. I very much pride myself on being prepared for every practice, for being completely locked in and giving them my best. Because if I'm going to ask them to give me their best, then I have to make sure that I'm, doing my side as well. And so, making sure that our scout is on point, making sure that our practice plan is centered around the things we need to do to improve. So something, if we could ask them one word, the word that I would hope that they would use would be centered around, man, coach does his job. Like, coach is prepared. Coach gives us the best of himself so that we can be our best.
If you could have dinner with any coach, past, present, who would it be?
So I love watching the Golden State Warriors play.
Me too.
And it's complicated for me, though, Nan, because my favorite player is LeBron James. And
they went back and forth for a while.
Yes. And so every finals, I was watching the games, cheering for LeBron's team. But then I'm like, oh, wow, that was a really good offensive set. Like, wow, I love the – nope, they suck. Cheering for LeBron. And so I was torn the whole time because their style of basketball they play, some of – I'd venture to guess that they live out a bunch of the PGC principles that we talk about here.
I would believe it.
And sitting down with Steve Kerr and just listening to, okay, sometimes I struggle getting a hotshot 16-year-old to buy into this stuff. He's getting some of the best players in the world to buy into teammates matter, to buy into it's not my bucket, it's our bucket.
He coached the Olympics, the Olympic team.
Exactly. How did he do that? And I want to learn from that.
That's a great answer. This has actually been a really fun episode for me because oftentimes with this podcast, I try to cover all sports, and obviously basketball is where I spend all of my time. So It's fun to go dive all the way into all the basketball stuff, and summertime is like PGC time. So yeah, this has been a really fun one, Robby. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, buddy.
No, of course. So just get in touch with Robby and see his details. That's all going to be in the episode notes. I believe it's Coach Robby Price.
Coach RZ Price.
There it is. It'll be in episode notes, clear as day, as well as his PGC Director URL. So feel free to check in and tap in with Robby and see what he's up to. Please remember to like, comment, follow, subscribe to the show. The number one way to to grow a podcast is by sharing it. So please send it to a friend, family member. It would mean the world to me to get Robby's story out and to continue to spread my message. So with that'll bring this episode to a close. Thank you so much, and we'll be back here next time.